to be shutting out a whole group of very vulnerable people that may have legitimate complaints of discrimination.
Okay. We want to talk now about the harmonized sales tax, but I don't want to talk about it for too long because we know a couple of things. Number one, you're all opposed to it. We know that. So I don't suspect there are vast differences of policy among you on whether or not you agree or disagree with the McGuinty government's plans to harmonize the sales tax next July. What I want to know is who among you, and Randy, you get to go first this time, who among you will actually reverse this policy if you become Premier? And remember, we are recording this and we will play the tape back. Randy Hillier.
I've asked in the House that this HST be deferred and make it an election issue in 2011. That's what I believe we must continue to fight for, is have it deferred and put on...
But let's not go there.
So it's a hypothetical question. Is it going to be there? Is the HST going to be there in 2011 when the Conservatives take power? I'm not sure. How will it have been implemented? I'm not absolutely sure. But I believe right today, with the knowledge that we have today, the HST ought to be repealed.
Okay, I think we have to operate on the assumption that the McGuinty government, because it has a majority, is going to get this through.
Well, there was just a short while ago, Steve, that we have defeated McGuinty on one of his bills, Bill 126, where he tried to limit how many people under the age of 21 were allowed in a car.
Right.
We got that stopped.
You think maybe you can stop this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we shouldn't stop until we do.
Okay, Tim Hudak, if it does come in July 2010, and you become Premier in October 2011, will you repeal this tax?
I'm not going to give Dalton McGuinty any quarter on this issue. I'm not going to give him an inch. I'm actually going to count on him to return to character. I mean, he's a notorious flip-flopper. And I believe we galvanize not only the leadership candidates here, the PC caucus, and taxpayers across this province, who, by the way, the more they learn about the impact of the Dalton sales tax, the angrier they get, we can kill it in its tracks before it even begins.
Frank, please.
Steve, I was the first one to challenge Dalton in the legislature long before the budget not to move forward with the HST because of the damage they can do. I also have called on the federal finance minister, as you know, not to transfer $4.3 billion of federal money to Dalton McGuinty for the sole purpose of implementing the HST. So I think we have an opportunity here to stop it in its tracks.
Did you get any of the other three to sign that letter?
They did sign it. They did sign it, and I was very interested that night to know what happened when Christine got home. But, I'm hoping that we can stop it. But here is, to your question, and in fairness, you said, if it does get implemented, what would I do? First of all, it's going to cost millions of dollars for businesses to put in place the structure for the HST. The last thing that I would do is call on businesses to spend millions more to deconstruct it. But I would reduce the provincial sales tax rate within the HST to relieve the pain that Dalton McGuinty is imposing as a result of it.
You can't do that, though.
Well, you can do it. Every other province that implemented the HST has done it. Nova Scotia reduced the provincial sales tax rate by 3.5 points when they implemented the HST.
But if I understand this right, you will no longer have that lever available to you. This will be a single harmonized federal tax that provincial treasurers can't touch. That's why you're getting the $4 billion. You can't touch it.
Well, and you know what we're going to do? We're going to reopen that because I believe that's leadership.
Okay, Christine Elliott, how about you on this?
Well, we are continuing to fight against the harmonized sales tax, Steve, and it is something that we're hearing from our constituents far and wide, and I'm sure that the Liberal backbenchers are hearing from their constituents very loud and clear too. So I think that we're going to continue to keep the pressure on them, and I very much expect that there are going to be some changes as a result of this, if not the full repeal of this idea. But I think we need to continue with it. I don't deal in speculative matters, so I don't think we know yet what it's going to look like. So I really can't can speculate about what the situation is going to look like in 2011.
Let's take a few minutes now and talk about autos. We know that the McGuinty government has decided to either invest in or bail out, use the language you prefer, the GM and Chrysler, to the tune of billions and billions of dollars. And I want to know, and Tim Hudak, you get the first kick at this one, if you were Premier today, would you have done the same thing?
I think something had to be done. I mean, you faced an Obama administration that owed its electoral success a lot of the states that were auto-producing and had the capacity to move all the jobs south of the border. But I am worried about where this is going. The notion of governments owning 72% of General Motors when you combine the U.S., Ontario, and Canada shares is concerning. Because some politicians like Dalton McGuinty would be tempted to tell them what kind of cars to build based on political considerations, not what people want to buy. And secondly, I am very concerned about the notion of taxpayers bailing out the GM pension. And certainly you feel terrible for anybody who's expecting a certain level of pension income, they find out they no longer will get it.
But taxpayers can't.
You can't go to that senior citizen, that middle class family that doesn't have a defined benefit pension and ask them for more tax dollars.
Frank Cleese on this.
I certainly would not have handled it the same way. Certainly something had to be done, but very early on, Steve, I called for money to be invested in a very different way. And that is to put the money on the front end, provide consumer initiative to actually purchase cars, for example, a 3-month provincial sales tax holiday, which was successfully done under Frank Miller a number of years ago. Every sales cycle starts with a sale. And I believe to put billions of dollars into the back end of an industry without creating economic activity really is not successful. And so I think what we need to do is take a totally different look at this issue. And I'm disappointed, frankly, that both the federal and the provincial government did not get more concessions from the unions on this deal. They had them right where they needed them to level the playing field, and they failed in that instance.
Okay, Christine Elliott, you represent Whitby-Oshawa.
I do.
Make a lot of cars in Oshawa.
We certainly do. And
So
bailing
what would you
out.
have done on this?
Well, bailing out individual industries is really anathema to us as progressive conservatives. It's not something that we wanted to do, but I think that the situation was something that called for some action. I think that the bottom line is it has to be for anything of this nature that there's got to be value for taxpayers. The jobs have to be sustainable in the future and not just sustaining jobs for the sake of it. But I think that thanks to Dalton McGuinty, we ended up in this situation. We have a significant way to go to turn around Ontario's economy. We need a pro-growth economic strategy. That's why I brought forward the flat tax, which is fair to everyone, boosts economic growth in every jurisdiction where it's been introduced.
Randy Hillier, last word on this.
No, I would not have done it the same way as Dalton McGuinty. Listen, we can all see a role for government in a temporary fashion to assist people and businesses when there is a catastrophic event happening that is beyond their control. That is not the case here. And I say temporary, we have now bought GM. Between the U.S. government, Canadian government, and the Ontario government, we now bought them. This is not a temporary assistance package that we've done. We've taken ownership. That is not the role for government, to take ownership of the auto industry. And look at the disadvantage that we've put to the other auto industries, other auto manufacturers in this province. Ford has not asked for a bailout. Honda hasn't. Toyota hasn't. Those companies are now competing against GM with taxpayers' money in GM's
You think
bank.
that's not fair?
It's not fair.
Okay.
Absolutely not. And where were we with the forestry industry? Where were we with the manufacturing industry that has been harmed for so long in this province? We could have done many things in this province, but we had to wake up and start doing them long before when we first started seeing the problems develop.
Okay. Chapter 5 of our debate tonight, this chapter is called Vulnerabilities. This is the part of the debate where each of you gets to address the criticisms that you are no doubt hearing about your respective campaigns out there. Frank Cleese, let's go. You once ran for the leadership of the Canadian Alliance Party. You dropped out in mid-campaign. In 2004, Michael, can we see these numbers? You ran for the Ontario PC Party leadership. And as the first ballot numbers suggested, John Tory came first with 45%, Jim Flaherty came second with 33%, and there were you in third place with 22%. 5 years later, why should we assume anything will be different this time?
Well, the evidence is clear that lots is different this time. We sold more than 10,300 memberships. If you add the additional 5,000 that were in the general pool, that gives us some 15,000 memberships. And by the way, there is that much more experience that I can bring to the table now. I think that the evidence is very clear, Stephen, that experience matters. And I'm ready for this. I believe that the people of this province are looking for someone who not only has business experience to take us through these difficult economic times, someone who has government experience, and someone who knows how to win.
Okay, here's the second thing I hear about your campaign. In 2007, you were a great champion of faith-based education funding. And we all know what happened to that policy. It was not very popular and led to a really poor showing by your party. If people are concerned about and I know this time you've said that you're not going to bring